Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and today I'm playing through another season of the Invasions mode for Mortal Kombat 1. Now, in Mortal Kombat 1, I have played through multiple different seasons of the Invasions mode. We now find ourselves on Season 5, Season of the Storms. It is going to be the Raiden season. And I'll be quickly highlighting the opening cinematic for that season, then skipping to the final boss fight in the final cinematic, since those are the most interesting things going on in the seasons of Invasions mode. And in case you are unfamiliar, the Invasions mode in Mortal Kombat 1 is basically just a hypothetical scenario where some alternate dimension version of some main roster character starts to invade this continuity of Mortal Kombat. And then they just try conquering this timeline, destroying it, something along those lines. And then it is up to us to stop them. And for this season, the invader is going to be Raiden, or at least some alternate dimension version of Raiden. And with that build up out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the Invasions mode and check out that opening cutscene.
When this dark Raiden learned of other timelines and Earthrealms, he vowed to protect them all. He set out to build an impenetrable magic barrier to shield them from outside incursions. To power this barrier, Raiden wants to connect each Earthrealm's Jinsei, its life force, together. But commingling the immense cosmic power of all Jinseis will cause an explosion which will destroy reality. Entrenched in his position, Raiden refuses to heed the danger. He will connect the Jinseis and create the barrier, no matter what it takes, and no matter whom he must kill.
And alright, that sets up the plot for this season of the Invasions mode. We have alternate dimension Raiden over here trying to be overprotective of all the alternate dimension Earthrealms and his own because he just discovered them yesterday and is like, you know what, they really need me. So he comes up with the idea to go ahead and combine all the Jinsei, which I suppose is going to cause some sort of a crazy cosmic chemical reaction and blow up all of existence. Alright, pretty good plan there, Raiden. Pretty good plan. We are going to protect Earthrealm by destroying all the Earthrealms. That way there is nothing to protect anymore. Pretty solid plan overall, I like it. The only problem is like half the roster of characters we control exist on an Earthrealm, so we're going to have to go ahead and stop that plan from happening, even though I do kind of like the idea of just blowing everything up for the hell of it. So like I alluded to earlier, I will not be showing the entire playthrough of all the maps in the Invasions mode. There are like 7 of them that you have to go through. You end up fighting a bunch of random fights. And you progress your way all the way to these mini-bosses on the map, but there's really not too much of a rhyme or reason for the mini-bosses to be there. Some of them get dialogue explaining why they're there, others do not. And some of the dialogue is pretty lackluster, basically just saying they're going to try and win no matter what. It is not really the kind of stuff that moves the plot along, so we're just going to go ahead and skip over those. And after we remove and rip out all the tedious stuff from the Invasions mode, we basically have the opening cutscene, the final boss fight, the final cutscene, and I'll also go ahead and throw in the Titan battle for the season. That way we get to see one of the more unique fights that the season has to offer. So yeah, I'm kind of just showing my initial gameplay playing through the very first level of the Invasions mode while I make this point. It's not going to be something I show the entire playthrough of. And with that being said, let's go ahead and skip all the way to the very end and enjoy the final boss battle and the final cutscenes. That way we can go ahead and wrap up the most interesting things about Season 5. And alright, after about 7 levels of random encounters with very little plot relevance to them, we have finally climbed our way to the very end of the final level back on Earthrealm. We're back in the village where Raiden and Kung Lao grew up, and now it is here that we're going to be facing off against the final boss of the Invasions mode. It is time to face off against the corrupted, invading Raiden.
Without hesitation or remorse, Raiden has slain all who dared stand in his way. Only one combatant remains to stop him.
I've been having visions of demons.
What were they? An Enra?
Alright, that's a pretty fun little reference to start off the fight against Dark Raiden. Smoke's over here hearing demons in his head, and Raiden's just suggesting that it might be a Ninra. Which a plot thread from the old timeline that went absolutely nowhere was that Smoke was inhabited by a demon, a smoke demon called Inenra. That's kind of where his smoke powers come from, is this demon that was within his body and dormant. And supposedly whenever he died and got resurrected by Quan Chi, the demon took over. Now that was a pretty cool little setup, and it kind of alluded to the fact that maybe in his childhood his parents and some sort of a cult had caused that to happen, but like I said, it really didn't go anywhere and was never a major plot point for anything going on back in Mortal Kombat 9, 10, or 11. And here in Mortal Kombat 1, Smoke is pretty much completely different. Now, it's still not impossible that the Aninra plot could come back in some way in the future, but it doesn't really seem like the direction they were trying to take that character, so that opening dialogue, as fun as it is kind of just a throwaway comment. Although I still like to imagine the idea of dark corrupted Raiden going against the Aninra possessed Smoke, so yeah, that's kind of a cool matchup. After all, that would basically be a fight between the corrupted versions of both Smoke and Raiden, and it would have been a pretty fun one to see play out. But instead we just get this hypothetical scenario here in the Invasions mode. I suppose I should probably go ahead and comment on this final boss fight for the Invasions mode rather than just focusing on hypotheticals and random conversation. So, like most of the Invasions bosses at the very end of their Invasion season, Raiden is really not that bad. And that mostly comes down to the fact that by the time you finally reach him, your character is most likely already at the max level or very close to it that they can achieve in the Invasions mode. So their stats are going to be about as high as they can be, and depending on how you distribute them, the fight gets a lot easier. And also on top of just having your stats distributed well for a person that's max level, you've also probably acquired some boosters along the way that will give you some more resistance to the element of the character you are fighting. In this case, electricity for Raiden. Oh, and on top of that, there's also potions and things of that nature that can also give you an edge in this fight. So realistically, by the time you get here, your level should be so high, your stats should be so high, you should also have a bunch of resistances, and also you can make things even easier by using consumable items. This fight should be super simple, pretty much regardless of what character you're using, with the exception of those with a type disadvantage. Like, if I remember correctly, the blood-related characters are very weak to Raiden. I remember Natara having an absolutely awful time against Raiden, but yeah, just avoid like 3 certain characters and you'll be fine. Although I am saying this after we're already over with the Invasion Mode Season 5 and we're in Season 6, so, I mean, if you had selected any other character other than maybe those 3, then you did fine. We'll just keep saying things in past tense instead of present tense, and I think we'll be okay. In my case here, I didn't really use any consumable items to get to this point. I just leveled up Smoke, and, well, you're seeing how the fight unfolded. With the exception of one fight, actually, because this took me 2 tries.
Got a light?
Brutality! Smoke wins.
The Thunder God's attempt to fuse Jinsei's had drawn the attention of Raidens from other timelines. Banding together, they broke his connection with them and purged from him the dark power which had driven him to madness. His senses returned. Raiden quickly realized his grave mistake, how he had nearly destroyed all timelines in a universal Armageddon. He set to work with his counterparts to heal the damage that had been wrought. Though I wish to trust this newly reformed Raiden, I fear I cannot. His dark urges pose too great a threat. Thus, I have banished him to the void, the vast expanse of nothingness which exists between realms. He will not return until he convinces me that he is no danger to our safety.
And alright, that is going to be the conclusion to the Invasions mode for Season 5. We end up defeating Raiden, and then for good measure, we go ahead and tag in the Raidens from every single other dimension we can possibly find. And then they proceed to lightning slap the sense back into this corrupted Raiden, and he's like, oh man, maybe trying to do something that will probably result in the destruction of every single dimension we have discovered so far, maybe that's not a good idea. Then he's like, you know what? My bad, everybody. I want to help try and make this right. And then Liu Kang's like, no, 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 no. You are way too much of a risk. We're just going to go ahead and throw you into the Phantom Zone from Superman, and we're just going to kind of act like we're going to check you out and see if you ever get better, and then promise you we'll bring you back if you do have good behavior, but then just forget about you and never see you again. And that is the end to the Invasions Mode Season 5.
Stop, please. Don't hit me with water.
Has no one told you I've drowned an entire city?
So yeah, that boss fight against Raiden really isn't too bad, although I did end up losing once. So yeah, it took me 2 attempts to finally beat Raiden. It turns out Raiden does have an instant kill move that he can do at the very last round of this fight. Although in the second attempt going against Raiden, he never even busted out that attack again, so I really don't know what triggers it or what the best way is to counter it. He just did it to me once and killed me instantly, and then the second fight, he never did it again, and it was very, very easy to beat him. So I have played every single season of the Invasions mode up to this point, and I've managed to make videos for all the seasons with the exception of the current season, which I'm still kind of working my way through. And for the first 2 seasons, I pretty much did multiple episodes for playing through the entire season from start to finish on every single level. But after having done that twice, I kind of realized there really wasn't enough variety in the gameplay happening in the Invasions mode to make it interesting. At least interesting enough to make multiple hours worth of videos for. So following that, I ended up cutting down the season playthroughs substantially. For Season 3, I ended up cutting out pretty much every other fight other than the main boss for the Invasions mode, the cutscenes, and the mini-bosses. But even then, a lot of the mini-bosses kind of felt similar or not all that significant, so I ended up cutting those out as well in the following 2 seasons. So yeah, my biggest complaint about the Invasions mode was that it was just really, really repetitive and just a gigantic grind. Although, even though I said that back then, a lot of the things I was complaining about the most have been kind of sort of corrected, or at least it is being worked on. Like, I complained quite a bit about how little experience you get to level up your characters whenever playing through the Invasions mode, and that got corrected. I complained that a lot of the fights were super repetitive, which is not a good thing when you have to do hundreds of them to complete the Invasions mode. And since that complaint, the creators of Mortal Kombat have added a good variety of different survive levels, which can be a bit difficult, but still it's some variance. At least some of them can be difficult. It really depends on the character you select. But on top of that, they also started to do these trials for different characters where they have to use their unique special attacks in order to navigate a death trap gauntlet. And after you complete that obstacle course, congratulations, you win. But you kind of have to really figure out how to use your character's special attacks at just the right time to, survive everything. That's a nice touch, I like that. It gives you a reason to start playing around with some other characters, even if it's just for a moment. And even some of the mini-bosses now in the Season of the Reptile, the most current season, they are also getting some intro dialogue from Liu Kang, which is something that was not happening before, so you at least get some kind of an explanation as to why they are kind of important to this playthrough. Whereas before, you just suddenly found yourself fighting a mini-boss for no reason. Granted, there could be way more explanations, a lot more building on the lore of the invasion, but still, it's a step in the right direction. Now, with all that being said, I don't know if it's enough for me to start extending out the playthroughs of these Invasions modes beyond just the opening cutscene, the final boss, and the final cutscene, but I have been considering it, and if I do end up extending everything, I'll probably just include the mini-bosses to the playthrough again rather than the whole thing, since they are about the only other thing I really feel like is noteworthy for the playthrough. But yeah, I just figured I'd throw that out there because I have been kind of considering it. We will see. After all, I was pretty burnt out those first 2 seasons trying to edit everything together from hours of footage. I don't know if I want to do that again, but I might be able to bring myself to do that for the mini-bosses. That part might still be a little bit fun. Like in the background right now, I'm going against the Titan version of the character Rain because once a season they throw in a Titan boss battle that's only available for 3 or 4 days. And there's a lot more to this fight than you would be getting with a standard mini-boss, but some of them do have some random gimmicks just like this, in smaller doses mind you, but just like this. And that does make the invasions mode kind of fun. Granted, it takes a little bit too much effort to get to these fun fights, but these fights are enjoyable. So a part of me thinks that it would be fun to bust those out in these playthroughs as well, but I have not committed to the idea of breaking those out again. Nevertheless, I did promise to have the Titan battle going on in the background, and if I was not too pressed for time during the outro, I might just give some details about it. And yeah, I ended up winning this one against Raiden using Omniman. Now, I don't really have an amazing reason for why I was using Omniman versus some other characters, but there was something of a strategy or a reason behind the decision. And that's because in this Titan battle, periodically, whenever Raiden does one of his special attacks, I believe, or maybe it's just really any attack at all, he was producing a water bubble that would just float around on the stage. And you do not want those to remain floating on the stage, because eventually he will just go ahead and pop those bubbles and then use those as a means of healing. The more bubbles there are in the field of play, the more health he gets back, which means you could end up in a pretty much endless fight against Raiden until eventually your health just depletes while he's healing all of his. So I wanted a character that could easily pop those bubbles so that Raiden could not heal, or at least we could minimize the healing. And since the bubbles float into the air, ideally you would have a character that can navigate pretty well in the air as well. And with Omniman, he has that special attack that's basically just a chest bump, and he can do that on the ground or in the air, and he can use that to pop the bubbles. So there you go, my very simple reason for choosing Omniman for the Titan battle against Raiden. And yeah, even though there really wasn't anything amazing behind that decision, and there may have been other characters better for this task, I did end up winning with Omniman. And it is with the victory against the Titan version of Raiden that we are going to be concluding the Mortal Kombat 1 Invasion Season 5. And right now, as I am voicing this over, we are in the Invasion Mode Season 6. So the very next video I do for the Invasion Mode, well, that's going to be in the current season, the very first time that's happened. So I am finally almost caught up with all my Mortal Kombat stuff, or, well, no, that's definitely not true. Well, I'm almost caught up with the Invasions mode, so where every single time I release those going forward, it should be in the current season as opposed to months afterwards.
Have I proven my point?
Brutality. Omni-Man wins.
So yeah, I'll be beating up the invading version of Reptile whenever it's still relevant. I am not sure how long it'll take me to finish Season 6, but I am working on it. I will try to get that invasion mode video completed as soon as I can, but until then, take care and I'll see you next time.